1,500 years ere seed sown. Truth was twisted, its seeds were grown. Break the lies, spark the mission. Welcome to Quranic Inquisition.
Hello and welcome to the stream. Today it's just me, Kashif here, and I want to do a stream on a very particular singular word, so it won't be very long. We'll just be here for maybe 20, 30 minutes or so, talking about, maybe even less, talking about this word in particular here, which is the earth, the land. And this word is in the Arabic written as Alif, Lam, Alif, Ra, Dade. And you can see my cursor, unfortunately you cannot. But this Dade is this final character on the left here of this Arabic script form in the slide in front of us. This Dade is equivalent to a Sade. The only difference is that there is a dot. The other thing about the Dade, and we spoke about this on the stream, on Wednesday rather, where we were joined by Saint Murad and Mel from Islamic Origins and Saint Murad from Saint Murad. And Murad discussed with me about how the Dade character is pointed to by Arab speakers in the Muslim world as the reason why the Arabic language is so ancient. What Murad put forward is rather the opposite, is that the Dade as such witnesses to the novelty, to the innovative nature of this Arabic script form and this Arabic language. So to prove that case today, we're going to look at this word and the question around it. So the thing is with most of the words in the Quranic Arabic is that if you simply write them into any comprehensive lexicon for the Aramaic or the Syriac, you will very, very quickly find that this is a Syriac or an Aramaic word. That's not always the case, though. There are words which break that pattern. So, for example, with this word, al-Ard, which is how it's pronounced with the Dade supposed phonetic, this character. For the most part, all words you can trace it back to the Syro-Aramaic. But some of them, like Hawariyun, for example, this is seemingly coming from the Gez, which is the Ethiopic. So we have cases like that break that pattern, but also we have cases where there are words taken from the Hebrew, which makes sense given the fact that this textual tradition was being put together around the same time as the Masoretic text tradition was being codified. And that would make sense of this obsession, which we observe in the text with Hebrew words. Okay, so why am I explaining all of that? The reason why is because this form, Alif, Ra, Dade, firstly, it can't be represented even in the Aramaic or the Syriac, because the Dade character is entirely exclusive to the Arabic, which is a smoking gun. So let's move on to the first slide here to have a look at this, the usage of this word in the Quranic text. You can see from the background, this is a well-used word in the text. This is just from the beginning, from Surah 2, all the way to only Surah 8, the beginning of Surah 8 on the bottom right there. So in 8 surahs, you can see the amount of attestations, the amount of usages of this word, al-Ard, right? Or al-Ardi, right? If you pronounce it with the diacritic there, right? So the question is, what's going on with this word? And the thing is, you can check, well, the first part, of course, is acknowledging the reality that in the initial composition of the text, this character was not written with a dot. This character, like all the other characters, was written as a skeletal rasam. And hence the question, well, firstly, of whether, let's assume the Dade is authentic and valid for a second. Even so, you would still have ambiguity between the Sade and the Dade. But the main point is simply that the Dade cannot be represented in any other Semitic language, so we can't even trace the potential roots for this, unless we assume that it's simply the D character. But we're not going to go there yet. Instead, we should assume that this character is fabricated. There is no Dade. There's only Sade, which is the form that would have occurred in the initial manuscripts. The reason I put that forward, right, is because you can then look in the Aramaic. So I can go into the comprehensive Aramaic lexicon. In fact, let's do this dynamically here. I'm going to, oh, one moment. I'm going to share my slides. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm sorry for the dark screen. We're going to go to Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon. I'm going to field that now. Hopefully it's done automatically, not quite. My tab for the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon. This isn't relevant. This is related to something else. But so here we can check. So this represents the Aleph. And this is the Ra, and this is the Sadeh. It's just the Unicode use, right? But you'll see immediately it recognizes it's Aleph Ra Sadeh, but there is no form Aleph Ra Sadeh, right? So it's not Aramaic. It doesn't match. We can then go to the Cedra. In fact, I'm gonna have to share this tab instead. Ah, how cool is that, right? So we're on the Cedra. This is for the Syriac. So we were just looking at the Aramaic, and now we're looking at the Syriac. So I put in Aleph Ra Sadeh. This is a Stranglo-Syriac script. And you see, we don't have anything here, right? So it's, okay, so what's going on with this word? The thing is, let's go back to the, sorry for the technical difficulties, first time. So we'll go back to our slides here, and we see here the usage of the term. And in the context, we can see how it's used. And this is crucial, obviously, because any orthography could mean anything, right? But you have to read it in the context of other orthographies it's used in. So we read here in Surah 2, verse 11, La, which means not, the negative particle, spread corruption. So do not spread don't spread corruption. In fi al-ard, in the earth. It's translated as the earth, which we'll see is correct, but it's the dot shouldn't be there, basically. So another couple contexts, the one who made for you the earth. So the earth is something that is made, a resting place, okay? The one who created for you what is in the earth, okay? So the earth is something that's created. It has things that are created in it. It is something that you shouldn't spread corruption on. Contextually, it's pretty clear that it's referring to the earth. Great. Now let's go to the beginning, the actual beginning, where this all really started, which is in the first book, the book of Genesis. And not just any chapter, let's go back to the beginning, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning created God, the heavens and the earth. Let's look at this word for the earth, haaretz. You may have heard this in maybe a clip or so. It's used in the context of referring to the, let's say, sinful inclination in Jewish speech, the haaretz, the inclination of the earth, like the earthly, the earthly desire. We have a similar concept and terminology, of course, in the Christian tradition. So let's look at this form of haaretz. So if we zoom in to break it down, for those who don't, read Hebrew, what we have here, we're reading right to left on the word haaretz. So on the left side here on the screen. So the first character, this is the ha. This is the soft H. This acts as the definite article. So in English, we say the. In Hebrew, they say ha. So that means that we have the definite article here, and then we have three consonants. We don't care about the diacritics for now. We're caring only about the consonantal rasam because that's what we have in the earliest manuscript witness for the Quranic tradition. So the aleph is the A character, the first of the alphabet, right? Then this one here is the ra, and this one here is the sadeh. The sadeh is kind of unique, and like we don't really have it in English. The closest thing I could imagine is the sound of the C character, like sa, sa. It's more harsh. It's like a TZ sound, haaretz, right? So that's the word. If we look here in the middle of the slide, from the top down, you can see first the full form with the 9th century diacritical rendition. Then if we move down one, we get it without any of the, let's say, extra diacritics except for those necessary for disambiguating consonants. The next stage is to remove the definite article such that we compare apples to apples and not worry about the ha versus the alif lam. They both act as the English the, definite article, so they're equivalent. So all we're dealing with here is this form on the third row of the middle column here on the slide. Aleph, Ra, Dade. But like I said, the dot wasn't there initially. So at the very least, there was ambiguity, if not an entire fabrication of the Dade, given the fact that there's no attestation or witness of its existence or utility prior to the Quran itself and the interpretation thereof afterwards. So if we just, erase that dot, which wasn't, it's not even erasing, it's restoring to the original condition, right? Because there was no dot initially. So then what we're left with is Alif, Ra, Sadde. Oh, Alif, Ra, Sadde. It's the same shape. Oh, whoa, shocker, right? So that's pretty interesting. So in Genesis 1:1, which wouldn't be a footnote, this would be something that anyone who was learned in the 7th century would have been familiar with, whether the original Hebrew or through the Peshitta or through the Targumic transmission, at least one, right? So the concept would have been there, but the question is very unique, which is why would they use the Hebrew term? This is a question, because one could put forward, okay, in the Aramaic transmission, it came from the Hebrew and was never, let's say, replaced. Because in the Aramaic and the Syriac, I don't have it off the top of my head, but they have a word for the earth. It's just not this word. This word is the Hebrew word. But for some reason, we have that exact form in terms of skeleton in a Arabic text from the 7th century. So what I would suspect is the reason why is two options. One is because of Jewish influence in the development of this linguistic tradition, and that would be a simple explanation for the inheritance of this word form. Another is that this is a text which seems to be intended to convince Jewish people of the Messiah of their scriptures. So maybe this was a product of pandering in some form or the other. Regardless, the form is there. So the skeletal form that we see to represent the earth in the Quranic Arabic is this form. So let's look then. What would we be seeing potentially happen then in history? Because if you had this form, albeit the script form is not the Hebrew script form, it's a different script form, but the Semitic languages, they have cognates, right? Like the Sadeh character in the Hebrew is the cognate of the Sadeh character in the Aramaic, is the cognate of the Sadeh character in the Syriac, and I put forward is the cognate of the Sadeh character in this Arabic script. So what would you imagine would happen if you had a text, a text form, textual tradition where you have a word in front of you, which is written as Alif Lam, Alif Ra Sadeh. And a Jewish person would come to you and point at your book and say, hey guys, I don't think you realize like this word is our word. Like this is the Hebrew word for haaretz, or in Arabic it would be like alaretz, right? But, we can't have that. We can't be having this awkward moment where someone's pointing at our text and saying, hey, you see that word there? That's our word. So rather than having to deal with the awkwardness, let's just put a dot there. And we've turned the tables, you see. This word isn't haaretz. This word isn't alaretz. This word is al-ard or al-ardi. So we put a dot there. This character doesn't exist in any, tradition prior to the Quranic tradition. It's seemingly picked out of thin air. And it seems that if we assume that it doesn't exist and hence remove the dot, we appear to find a more than coincidental match with the Hebrew term for earth. This seems more than a coincidence. Rather, what it seems like is happening here is the following. There was the initial Alif Ra Sadeh witness for the orthography in the text. The textual tradition was pointing at the Hebrew word. Then confusion sets in, Persians take over, define the language, whether it's because of whatever the exact motivation or telos was of the individual who introduced the dot and hence the dade as such, whether it was one individual or a whole community. It seems to be the case simply that the word was originally the Hebrew word. But now it's an entirely different word. It doesn't sound really that similar, right? Aretz or aretz, ard. It's like the ts sound and the da sound. They're so distinct that, they shouldn't even really be sharing a form, right? It's the same thing with the ein and the gein, but that's for another video, right? I'll be very transparent here. My current gut instinct is that, well, it's more than just gut instinct. I have well-reasoned justification to believe that the dade, which is the one we're looking at here, this leftmost character with a dot, is fabricated. It didn't exist. It had no function except to obscure words that were awkward. You don't want the word to be referring to the word. Well, it's not referring to the word. That character isn't the sadde. You see, that's a dade, right? So that's pretty rough. So to expand what I was saying, to finish it, so I believe that the dade is fabricated. I believe that the gain character is also fabricated. I believe that the za, the frictive z, which is written exactly the same as the frictive t, teth character. However, the character has a dot. And now instead of it being pronounced like a T, it's pronounced like a Z. And lo and behold, this frictive Z, this gain, and this dade are all entirely exclusively unique to the Quranic Arabic, with no witness to the phonetic or function of it prior. It is entirely pulled out of thin air. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a word form in a text which came early, which was pointing to a Hebrew word for earth. And the usage in the text was so clear and obvious that it had to be earth, that this word form today also means earth. But the word isn't the same word. The word was haaretz, which could feasibly be transmitted into the Arabic as al-aretz. However, it's not that. It's al-ard. We've obscured all of the traces. We hit it all with a single dot. It was the earth. It was developed in the Hebrew. It had deep theological roots. It came from Genesis 1:1. But we put a dot there and spin tales and fables and tafsirs, and we've created a word out of thin air. It retains the exact same meaning because of the usage of it contextually in the text. It can't mean anything else because obviously it's that word. It's that word. But we have now hidden it. They have now hidden it. It's no longer visible. You can't see it unless you see below it. You have to open up the hood by putting your finger on that dot or erasing it, blinking twice and looking clearly at the text. So that's all I wanted to really show. I will give a sneak peek just because it's quite maybe not. No, not sneak peek yet. That's for another time. This is a very short stream. I want to keep it very, very short because it's all about this phenomena, right? We've talked about Aramaic words. We've talked about Syriac influences. We've even discussed the derivation of Hawariyun from the Gez, which is very much worth exploring and interesting phenomena in and of its own, right? Because it suggests a southern origin rather than a northern origin. Suggests point towards Yemen, not 7th century Yemen, but prior. I link it to the Himyarites and the Najran massacre. I think that's related. But putting that aside, this phenomena itself is important to understand. You have to stare at it. You have to realize what's happening here. Because, like I said, we have, I would say, roughly 90% of the content in the Quranic tradition can be deciphered very quickly with a Syro-Aramaic lens. Like you put in the Syriac, you put in the Aramaic into consideration, you can get through, I would say, upwards of 90%. However, here and there, you have Masoretic text quotations. An example of this, there's many, but some of them are bigger topics we should leave for later. But you see this, you have this phenomena of quoting Hebrew words. And when the quoting of the Hebrew word happens, it's even less known, presumably, by the community than the Aramaic and the Syriac, because it's even more of a niche language. So it's hilarious to see this phenomena of a Hebrew word which is quoted from the Hebrew Bible, from the Old Testament, from Genesis 1:1, and is spread all throughout the text. It's all over the place because it's an important concept, right? He created the heavens and the earth. The earth is where we live, right? So, speaking of corruption in the earth, speaking of God creating the earth, right? Genesis 1:1 attests that. So this is clearly that word. However, because of the introduction of the Dade character, it's not read that way anymore. It's not pronounced that way anymore. It's not understood as being derivative of that anymore. All that is done with a single dot. It's really quite brilliant. So that's really all I wanted to discuss today in terms of material. Just to look at this in Dutch, it's aarde. Dutch. They have a character in Dutch, a phonetic, which is specifically this sort of sound. Brutus, is that the case? Actually, okay, wait. Instead of showing the app per se, because that's something I'm working on, and I wanted to give a little bit of a taster instead of actually we'll show it a little bit, okay? This is gonna be fun, all right? So I am going to briefly screen share this tab. Is it screen sharing? No, we have to switch. Oh, yeah. Oh, interesting. Earth is called Aarde. Okay. Ooh, interesting. Ooh, wait. Is there an etymology? Because also in German we call the Earth Erde, right? So obviously Dutch and German is very similar. So now I'm thinking, whoa, did us as like, let's say, continental Europeans, like the Dutch, the Germanic speaking peoples, did we derive our phonetic, our word for the earth from the Hebrew by means of transmission through the Arabic and corruption therein into the that would be fascinating, wouldn't it? That would be hilarious. Dependent on local dialect too. Yeah, I see. No, I'm familiar. It sounds very much like the German word, which I am a German speaker. So that's very cool. So yeah, this is what we're looking at here. This is the tool to look at the Quranic Arabic and actually investigate it. So these are two verses, and we spoke about this a lot on our channel already. So this is going to be just, old news for many of you. This is the verse here. Wait, let's actually, I have only the two verses open. Let's pull up 86 from 1 to 10. So we get the first bunch of verses. So this is the first introduction verses here. They're not that relevant. Let's go down to the ones that we care about, which is verses 5 and onwards. This one seems to be anti-Marian sentiment here, but that's just an initial gloss there. But these are the ones that we care about. So to watch, or so to preserve, this is the gloss I've given, starting in verse 5. This is initially read in the current transmission. We can see here in Sai International, it's read as, "Let people then consider what they were created from." My rendering is, "So to preserve mankind of what is substituted." What's the next verse? We get, "Substitute from what ejected." Substituted from what ejected in the natural English gloss. And then, or in the Sin, it was, "They were created from a spurting liquid." All right, this is where it gets funny, right? This is where we get the jokes. "Going out from stemming from between the backbone and the rib cage." So this is supposedly where sperm comes from, you see. Sperm comes from a liquid that emerges between the backbone and the rib cage. I don't know about that. So Instead, that's what the sin says. I'm going to read it as I put it. So to preserve mankind, what is substituted? Substituted from what ejected, dedicated as holy from between the cross and the fat, where the fat is the Old Testament fat of the sacrifice, which is exclusively reserved for Yahweh. And in the sacrifice, it is burned to release a pleasing fragrance to the Lord. And this is then linked with Christ, such that Christ's body is the fat. This links also Old Testament theology and ritualistic practice in terms of the terminology itself. It's linking that to the passion, right? It's trying to harmonize the Old Testament tradition and the New Testament tradition, if you want to call it that, right? It's trying to smooth the sails and incorporate well, it's not even smoothing the sails. It's articulating the reality, which is that the Old Testament is pointing to Christ. So this seems to be the main intent and purpose of the Quranic authors. And yeah, it's pretty interesting to read such a verse, right? Either mankind was created from sperm between the backbone and the ribs, or how is mankind to be preserved? They had to be substituted with something. So to preserve mankind, of what is substituted? Substituted from what ejected, dedicated as holy from between the cross and the fat. Isn't that just beautiful? That's enough for now. This is an app that I'm developing and I'm filling out. It's a slow process, but eventually, like this what I have here and what it will become, this will be the full first translation of the entire Quranic text. It will be. And it won't be too long, in fact, until that's done. I give it max a year, and we'll have it all figured out. But until then, we're just gonna share what we find cool, find interesting, and see what we come up with. So here's a comment from Haidar M. One should also take into account the occurrences of this word, sometimes with the proposition Ali or Ali. I can't do the differentiation between the Aleph and the Ayin. I can't phonetically pronounce it. And sometimes with the Fi in the Quran. Yes. Yes. Okay, wait. Two things, right? So, wait. Is it Ali or wait. Which one is the one that they say means two? Ain Lam Ya. Is that Aleph Lam Ya also means two? Okay, wait. Wait, one moment. I'm just gonna have to verify one thing quickly before I answer, so I don't speak incorrectly. Okay, so the Ain Lam Ya, I mean that in the Aramaic would be to elevate something to, which is also why it's the name of the tradition of Ali, right? Muhammad and Ali. Ali is to elevate, to raise something up. So this is where the terminology comes from and the idea of it. It cannot have very mundane meanings as well, like, on or above or things like this in context. And the fi, okay, one should also take into account the occurrence of this word sometimes with the proposition Ali and sometimes with fi. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so elevate the earth or raise up the earth versus in the earth. Okay. What would you say is your intuition about what's going on there? Because fi is attested as having the meaning in and is used very consistently in the Quran with that sense. So I have no reason to doubt that one, right? However, with the Ain Lam Ya, this one I feel is also quite consistent because it retains this idea of elevation and on top of. What do you find to be the reason for this needed emphasis on the usage of these two words in relation to the word the earth? One moment, let me see if I can. Okay. Yeah, otherwise, so yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing screen. Oh, actually, wait, before I stop sharing screen, let's see how this process works. So let's say the word here, between. So if I wanted to check out that word, I can firstly provide I could revise the Rasan if I find the manuscript. So for example, here, if I wanted to look at manuscripts, I open up the manuscripts. It goes to this page. I immediately can look up the manuscript that's related to this verse. It's right here. So that's nice. And anyway, so we can then continue. We go into the Syriac or we go into the Aramaic, and it finds us through an API. this is one thing that's kind of interesting about Baina is it does have a root that is proper for the meaning of discern or to understand or to teach, so there's ambiguity there. However, if we look into the comprehensive Aramaic lexicon, we can find, Baina. We can find the attestation of between. So, and contextually in the Quran, it does appear to have that sense. Let's see if we can find it immediately. In fact, we did. So we can find it in the Aramaic as having the meaning of between or among, and therefore that one is pretty firm. So I'm going to stop sharing now and close it up because this was meant to be short, just looking at this one word, and also just to showcase a little bit of what I've been working on with this tool. And yeah, so I'm gonna wrap that up. Thanks all for watching, and please hit the like button. Please subscribe. And this channel is growing like crazy now. So that's a huge thank you for Zafar, who shouted out the channel. A huge shout out to Mel from Islamic Origins as well for his appearance then on the stream on Wednesday, and also for his gracious shout out many weeks ago, as well as Murad, who was the first one to shout out the channel, and also the reason why this whole process started with his amazing work on his translation. So that's it for today. Oh, sorry, I meant preposition, Allah and fi, preposition. I assumed like you meant that it was the word before al-ard, as in fi al-ard would be in the earth, and ali al-ard would be elevate the earth or above the earth. That would be the sense from the Syro-Aramaic understanding of those two constructions. We'll leave it there, guys. Thanks all for joining. Wrap it up, the shortest stream ever. And we hope to see you all on Monday then. Thanks and goodbye.
There is only one Quran, right? Every Quran in the world is the same. That's what you've been told. You have been told a lie!
26 of the Quran.
26 different Quran!
There are 0 Dawa guys apparently left on the planet who are willing to defend Muhammad in a debate.
Everybody can go and read it. This is a book full of mistakes in Arabic, in the grammar, in the spelling, in the pronunciation.
Whoever wrote the Quran made an error because they didn't quite understand what was written in the 7th century in the Torah and the Injil.
As promised, I will give you more than 20 reasons why I left Islam in this video.
We know that stories about Muhammad were made up on an industrial scale.
What in the world is this Injil?